Chapter 9. Just another rainy day. The next day it rained. My father asked me how I'd like to go to the movies. Oh, let's remember, Peter's mom is still in Boston, so it's just Peter, Dad, and Fudge. The next day it rained. My father asked me how I'd like to go to the movies. Just me? I asked. Nope, all three of us, he said. Fudge is very young to go, I said. Don't you think so? Maybe, but I can't think of anything else to do with him. That will take up a few hours. We could give him some socks, I suggested. You know how he loves to play with your socks. Socks won't last the whole afternoon, my father said. That's why I thought of the movies. What do we see, Dad? My father checked in his New York magazine. This is the day before checking on phones. A Bear's Life is playing in the neighborhood. How does that sound? What's that about, I asked. A Bear's Life, I guess, my father said. It's rated G. I was thinking of a good Western with lots of action, or else a picture rated R, where you can't get in if you're under 17 unless you're with your parents. But my father had made up his mind. A Bear's Life it was. I suggested that my father get Fudge cleaned up, because by then he was looking kind of messy. I don't think my father even put him into his pajamas last night. He's been wearing the same polo shirt ever since my mother left yesterday morning. By 1 o'clock, we were ready to go. All three of us wore raincoats and rubbers, that means rubber boots, and my father took his big black umbrella. One thing about New York, it's hard to get a cab when it's raining. But the movie theater wasn't very far away. My father said the walk would do us all good. There were a lot of puddles. It was really pouring. I like to walk in the rain, me too, especially if it isn't too cold out. It feels nice when it wets your face. I jumped over the puddles. My father avoided them too, but not Fudge. He jumped right into every one and splashed around like a little duck. By the time we got to the movie theater, the bottom of his pants were soaked. My father took him into the men's room. He stuffed a bunch of toilet papers up each pant leg so Fudge wouldn't have to sit around wet. At first, Fudge complained, but when my father bought him a big box of popcorn, he forgot about his stuffed pants. Right after we got settled in our seats, a big boy sat down in front of Fudge, so he had to change seats with my father. Now he was on the aisle. I was in the middle, and my father's on the other side. When the lights dimmed, Fudge said, "Ooh, dark." I told him, "Be quiet. You can't talk in the movies." "Okay, Pee-Tah," he said. That's when he started throwing his popcorn. At first I didn't notice, but I wondered why the people in the front of us were turning around every second. Then I heard Fudge whisper, "Pow, pow, pow," and I saw him throw a handful of popcorn. I poked my father. "He's throwing his popcorn," I whispered. My father reached around me and tapped Fudge onto the leg. "If you throw one more piece, I'm going to take it away from you." "No throw," Fudge said very loud. "Shh," the people in front of us said. "Shh," Fudge said back to them. "You see," I told my father, "he's too young for the movies. He doesn't understand." But from the moment the first bear came on the screen, Fudge sat still and watched. And after a while, I forgot all about him and concentrated on the movie. It was much better than I thought it would be. It showed all these bear cubs and how they live. I'm not sure when I realized Fudge was gone. I guess it was when I turned to ask him if he had any more popcorn left. I had already finished mine and was still hungry. I was really surprised to see he wasn't there. I mean, one minute he was sitting right next to me, and the next minute he was gone. "Hey, Dad," I whispered to my father. "He's gone." "What?" my father asked. "Fudge isn't in his seat." My father looked over. "Where did he go?" "I don't know. I just noticed he was gone." "Let me out, Peter. I'll find him." "Should I come too?" I asked. "No, you can sit here and watch the rest of the picture. He's probably wandering around by the candy counter." I stood to let my father out. I wondered what my mother would think if she knew Fudge was lost in the movies. Don't tell Mom. A few minutes later, the picture stopped, right in the middle of a scene. Oh no, the picture just means the movie. The soundtrack trailed off like a broken record. All the lights came on. The audience let out a groan. Some kids called out, "Boo! Boo!" Then my father and two ushers and a man in a suit came over to me. "He was sitting right here," my father told them, pointing to the empty seat on the aisle. "Well," the man in the suit said, "we've checked the restrooms and the office. He's not behind the candy counter. We'll have to search the theater." He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We'll continue with our film in one moment, but first we have to find a 3-year-old boy answering to the name of Fudge." Some people laughed when the man said his name. I guess Fudge does sound funny if you're not used to it. I thought, maybe he's been kidnapped. Would my mother be mad? That crazy kid, you can't even take him to the movies. Then I thought, who'd want to kidnap him anyway? This chapter almost seems like it's designed to show the reader how much Peter actually cares about Fudge, right? Sort of. Or like here. Anyways. What should I do, Dad? I asked. Why don't you walk up and down the aisle and call him, Peter? Okay. I said, here, Fudge, I called, starting down my aisle. It sounded like I was calling a dog. Come on out, Fudge. Good boy, right? When I got down to the first row and called, here, Fudge, he popped out at me. He scared me so bad I yelled, oh! Hi, Pee-Tah. Hey, I found him, I called. I found him, here he is. Then I turned to my brother. You dope! What were you doing way down here? And why are you sitting on the floor? Wanted to touch the bears, Fudge said. But bears are all gone. He spread out his arms and said, all gone. Again. My father and the ushers and the man in the suit ran to us. Fudge, my father said, scooping him up. Are you all right? He wanted to pet the bears. I said, can you beat that? Well, I guess we can continue the picture now, the man in the suit said. He cupped his hands around his mouth and said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A young man has been found safe and sound. Now we return to the conclusion of A Bear's Life. My father carried Fudge back to our seats. He held him on his lap for the rest of the show. I guess he wasn't taking any more chances. Later, when we got home, my father explained to Fudge that movies are like TV. It's just a picture. There's nothing to touch. Fudge listened, but didn't know whether he believed my father. I had the feeling he still thought those bears were in the theater somewhere. I made up my mind that I would never take my little brother to the movies. Never. At least, not until he was 9 or 10. We'll stop there.